Okay, good evening. Happy to see you again. I'm
Hi.
Sabrina. Good evening, everybody. For those who join us, I quickly put it back into context. In this project entitled Resilience, I started with composing one soundtrack. Then I proposed this soundtrack simultaneously to two filmmakers, Tejas Ewing and Deepish Vasudev, who then created a visual world on this. Simultaneously, I gave this soundtrack to a number of musicians, writer and dancer who chose a section and created their own creation on that section. And on a number of Thursdays, we are showing this what we call episodes, what I personally call interpolation, like going to Varese and John Varese. So, and tonight we are at our fourth episode. We had the very first one was the whole soundtrack with images without live musicians. After a couple of people joining, welcome. After which the next episode was Dennis Singh percussion. Then last week was Roberto Alvarez at the flute, and tonight Bertram, we pianist. So it's become a little ritual that I ask the soloist of the day to give his impressions. Bertram, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. I don't have very much to say. Wait, how should I start? What do you want to know about what I've done?
I don't want to know anything. We are interested to, because none of the soloists ever see their episode before the night. So Bertram, like his colleagues who preceded him and who will come after him, is discovering what Deepish, Tejas, and I have done, except that of course the soloist has recorded it, but has no idea what's going to happen with the recording. So you have you, Bertram, tonight, of course, have a privileged position because you have prepared this, you played, and after that, it sort of goes its own way, and you have no idea. So what will succeed, what will happen. So it's interesting to share. I'm not asking for a criticism or a review. It's as you feel it. What are your reactions? Surprise?
No, I fairly interesting. But I just watched the video earlier on. Thank you so much for the work on that. It's actually quite nice to see the how the video reacts to what I've done and vice versa. There's a kind of nice flow to the way that happens. What I found very interesting is what you mentioned, when eventually everything is put on top of each other. I don't really know how narratively or syntax-wise my interpolation works with those of the other musicians, and I did find it quite how to say, it worked really neatly with what comes after, which is actually the percussion interpolation. I was actually quite surprised by that. Yeah. When I was working on the improvisation itself, the only kind of rule I had with the music was that I wanted it to be I wanted it to be fairly spontaneous. The only real preparation I did with the creation of what I did was that I took my segment into 3 separate sections. So I approached each section with a kind of how do I put this? I just wanted each of it to have a certain kind of narrative flow. Beyond that, everything was spontaneous. I didn't actually prepare much material, and that is because I wanted to keep in the spirit of spontaneous extemporization. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I remember. I noticed you did not have any score, any scribble, any scrap of paper, but it did to me during the recording. It did feel like you arrived prepared and you had a quite a precise idea of what you were doing, and
Oh,
in
I'm
different
glad to know that.
and in the different takes, they were not all exactly the same, but there was a consistency in the musical vocabulary you were using.
Absolutely. That was kind of planned. If I had two things in mind going into it. One was the harmonic language of whatever you've done, which was quite interesting because you indicate that the piece is in E very major. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Which is in and of itself rather idiosyncratic. But I mean, from there, the opening section is in E major, and I basically run off that. But that pitch collection is very quickly contaminated in the section that follows right after that. The middle section, harmonically, now I don't think this is particularly technical, but the top region of what happens is basically a held pentatonic collection, right, on E. And the material on the bottom, that 7-note pitch collection, are the 7 notes that are not played in the top 5. So essentially, you're holding all 12 notes for a very, very long period of time, which is harmonically extremely ambiguous. So I had to find things to latch on to, really. What I found, because I watched other interpolations, I've heard the other recordings. In general, everyone seems to latch on to the pentatonic collection. There's kind of a noodling on that dee da da dee dum kind of thing going on over and over again. And I play the piano. The piano is in essence a harmonic instrument, I think. And if I have to deal with it harmonically, I have to in some way resist what you've done, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Because your score has such a gravity that every time I try to pull away from it, I feel like I have to be dragged back into it. So the other thing that you might find interesting is the idiom. You might call it fake jazz, but that really came from there was, the resultant 7-note collection that you have at the bottom with the strings and everything. The top 4 notes of that 7-note collection highlights the top 4 notes of a blues collection, and I could not shake that. And that was extremely quaint to me, which is why I ended up with this kind of faux jazz aesthetic. I thought that would be a nice way to launch out of that and then explore different harmonic fields. The last thing I did that I actively prepared is just for fun. I made a cipher of your name, and I used that as melodic material to run off whenever I feel like harmonically I need to break away from something. Yeah, I was basically playing your last name.
Do, la, E flat. What do you do with the letter T?
It was basically a C, A, B, D, E, E, F, B.
Oh,
So I
well,
used the online generator, and I think they quantized it to a minor mode, and I just ran with it.
I feel honored. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was just using fragments of that and transposing it. And during the bit at the end where it cuts into the solo, I play that. It cuts into the empty space. I play that in full.
But that is it's perfectly possible. We play with okay, when we compose, we set ourselves rules, and then we decide, we play with the rules, we go against the rules, sometimes we amend the rules, but they can be interpreted in different ways. And I found it very interesting that I listen to jazz, but I don't compose jazz. It's not the world in which I was educated and grew up. And so to hear what you did, it works. It's organic. And so you had the harmonic approach, jazz, because of the piano, or not because, with the piano. And Roberto had a totally other approach, modal, and both work. And so I'm happy with that. Bertram, one more question for you about the visuals. You know, we musicians, Roberto had very interesting responses to the visual. How musicians, we tend to think more abstract. And how did you, were you imagine anything, or actually anything visual, or actually not? And what you saw tonight, how do you respond to that emotionally?
So I mean, of most interest to me is the color and the eruptive nature of how things develop. I think that fit very nicely with my what I've done with it. I mean, in general, kind of representational kind of visual style is not necessarily something that I immediately resonate with, but the colors and kind of the how to say the conceit works with me. I think that has a nice touch to it. I don't necessarily have a visual response in the way I in kind of conceive something like this. But yeah, it was very interesting to see how that happens. It's not every day I get to see something I do get visualized in this manner.
Do you want to ask anything to Tija sits here next to me, and we have also Deepish in attendance. Would you like to ask them? Engage with them on the visual side?
Not much in particular, honestly. I just like to say that I enjoyed what I saw, and that was very fun to see. And thanks for working on it.
Thank you as well. Were you surprised that we didn't show so much of your fingers on the keyboard as much as your face? That's something we deliberately did because, yeah.
No, there was a lot going on with the layering. I think there was I don't think I found it anything superfluous or anything of the sort. There there's a counterpoint if you think about the different layers of finger movements. That where the music gets a bit denser and you see kind of different layers of movements in the fingers. How to say? There's a visceral reaction to that. So I think that works for me. It is a bit disorienting to hear something and not see it exactly as, I mean, considering I played it, of course. But I think, yeah, it comes off quite nicely for me in that sense.
So one of our perspectives is that often when you see piano shown on video, it focuses a great deal on the keys and on the hands, and you don't get to see the performer in their face, and you don't get to see the piano is a huge instrument. The keys are actually a very small percentage of it. So we just wanted to show it from, our belief is the strength of video is you get to show things from a totally different perspective than what an audience would normally see. So again, we wanted to show the piano in a way that maybe people haven't always seen, and a totally different perspective that focuses more on the expression of the performer rather than the keys, which are inanimate objects.
Yeah, that definitely works for me. I don't think I'm a particularly interesting looking performer. So, but plenty about it to look at.
No, I disagree with that. Your eyes, you have a strong personality, and it feels, it comes through.
Yeah, I would agree. We've said about every performer that they've all been very performative. So yeah.
That works.
Deepish?
I completely disagree with you that you're not an interesting person visually.
Really?
They're very interesting.
When we were there's just almost, it's when I was editing the video and I was watching you, it almost feels like you're pushing all your energy into your fingers. So you have this like very focused look, and like, and I've filmed other people play piano as well. So everyone has like this different style, and yours was very like, it felt like you were leaving a mark on the piano.
Hmm.
There's some people whose fingers are like feathers and they go on the piano. Yeah, you're leaving a mark on the piano. So there's always something that many people don't realize that they have, like certain small styles and like elements. But apart from that, I'm happy you mentioned about the eruptive nature of your piece. That's like the first thing that Tejas and I felt when we watched your performance and went through the videos. There's almost it almost feels like as if you're trying to build something in the whole piece, and then the end you just destroy it. So we wanted to visually kind of like show that, like it's like creation and destruction and like the cycle of. That's why if you closely realize, the visuals in the beginning are actually reversed in the end. So
I
there's
didn't
almost like symmetrical kind of thing that we wanted to like. Tejas and I wanted to show in the video. Yeah.
Yeah, some of the fireworks especially.
And the
I
fireworks are
noticed.
like, yeah, the fireworks uh, were like the first image that came into our minds when we were hearing you play, because it almost feels like each key we pressed was like small lights were like lighting up in our brains, and we were like, what do we do? Fireworks. That makes perfect sense.
So, Deepesh, did you know that I have used palindromes? Or
In in the you told us last week, but
oh,
I did this video before. I started the video before that.
oh,
But
okay.
I can. I mean, even in the first video that I ever made, you can see there's a beginning and the end, and they both are diametrically opposite. I
Okay.
mean, I can't explain. I'm not a musician, but there's something that's translating and like going to me, and I can visually see it.
I think that subconsciously we could tell.
Yeah.
But we never would have said it's a palindrome, but that's why the first video has a flow to it, which is like bookended by two similar elements. So yeah.
And then also you said how the bells, you found the midpoint, and then you mathematically, it's there. Like I think we don't notice it, we feel it. So and then we want to accentuate that with visuals.
Roberto, good evening. I like your smile.
Good evening.
Good evening. Anything you felt and would like to share?
Well, I really liked the Berton's performance. I thought it was really, really nice. More than sharing my thoughts, I have a couple of questions, but are more visual. I saw that you use different colors at different stages of the performance, and there must be a meaning to that. But I was trying to think. I was like, I cannot see why the relationship in between the colors and the music, if there is any.
Tejas, do you want to answer, or I'll answer?
Well, we both can, but
Okay, go.
of course, I think it's the same thing where the easiest way of explaining it is that it's an emotional response to the music. So it's not like oh, this should be blue because it sounds more quiet. It's just the response that you get. The other thing I will say is we're trying not to repeat colors throughout the piece. We don't, throughout the entire series of all the films, we don't want to constantly repeat the same color themes. So those are some of the overarching ways that we're dealing with it. Deepesh?
What they just said as well. Another thing that we did is, so if you look at the blue in the beginning, and then in the end there's this orange for a while. So blue and orange are actually in the software that we use. when you invert them, that's what you get. They are both opposite. They're both inverted colors.
Hmm.
And the reason we put, like, there's a lot of pink in the video, right? In that beginning section. So that one, I actually wanted to put a very strong color before. We tried green. I wanted red as well,
Hmm.
but then red, because, like I said, for me, uh, I wanted to show like creation, and I thought red is like the color of blood, and like it would be really, really like visually interesting. But then we put it, and it looked really weird. It didn't match the vibe.
Yeah, and
Then,
it's true that we wanted colors that could be inverted. So then you have to make certain choices so that you can directly invert them.
yeah,
And then
exactly.
both sides of it still look good, which is quite important. So that is one of the answers to your questions. How did we choose the colors? We chose because there is a lot of feeling of inversion and mirror and palindrome throughout all the videos. So of course we have to choose colors where I mean, the audience would never know, but I can promise you they are actual inversion. Like we could tell you that that's true and you wouldn't know the difference, but the colors we chose have a direct inversion in the other part of the video. So
Yeah. So yeah, that's what we did, and yeah.
Okay, thank you. And also, Bertrand, I was very glad that different musicians, we are reacting to Robert Bells in different ways. So I think this is a big characteristic of this piece. And I'm very curious about how is it gonna resonate with the rest of the musicians in the next few weeks.
Tonight we have Verena. Verena Tay is a writer, and she will come in subsequent episodes. Verena, I'm really interested to hear what you can share, especially because you're not a musician. I love musicians. I have nothing against musicians, but I'm also very interested in responses of non-musicians. You have to, yes, unmute yourself, yes.
It's very hard for me to articulate it because I guess since I'm really responding as a layman, so um, um, it's interesting how the three musicians so far have chosen ways to like slip themselves in, and it's also very interesting also how to also watch the very different playing styles of each musician as well, and also to also see how Deepesh and Tejas have interpreted it visually. And I think for me, the very first video that they did is like, whoa, kaleidoscope. and then the next few videos, okay, how are they going to be different from that? So while it's interesting to hear a kind of the interpretation of palindrome and reversal of colors and all that, but I think also the the images that they've chosen is very interesting. So, for instance, to interpret Roberto's flute playing, it's wind, and then the grasps, and then for water for all the percussion, and then tonight, okay, it's not one particular image that came, but there were several. So it's not like one single dominating image. So that was interesting.
Verena, I'm curious. Your craft is words. You build words. You like the jewelry. You create words. So I innocently asked a question. I'm not second guessing or on a fishing expedition, but when you hear sounds and you hear and visually you see video, does that unlock in yourself like stories, words, or not necessarily?
Right now, just watching the videos just for the sake of watching it. So I'm not like consciously trying to create story or
Okay.
be subsequently inspired to write something else. No. So I'm not putting that hat on. I'm just, enjoying what I see online. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Hi, John. Good evening.
Hi.
It has become a routine. Thursday night, I want to have I would love to have your feedback, because sometimes you ask us questions or point out things and they keep playing in my brain, like who is controlling who. I still don't have this answer. So hi, Kat. What is your what would you like to share about tonight in Bertram's music?
I would start. Thank you, Sabrina. Hi, everybody. I want to congratulate everybody. It was very powerful. And I've always thought of the concerto as a relation of the individual with society. And what is that relation exactly? And it really is such a huge gamut from the early concerti of the mid-18th century, going into the 19th century, and this sense of individuality, but the individuality becomes alienation, and it can become adversarial, or it can become congenial. It can become consensus, or it can become power against power. And so now that I've watched the four, and this has been an enjoyable unfolding in my mind to watch this once a week. And again, as I said earlier, I'm interested in the space between. For me, the space between the performances is as potent as the performance themselves. So I'm interested in the passage of time. This is one of the things I'm trying to track. But the relationship of the players, I think, has been quite different. And tonight, with Bertram, and wonderful playing, Bertram, you came in my estimation of it, I felt that there was might against might, or might with might, power to power, and coming into it almost as if they're almost like the Milky Way and Andromeda in how many in a billion years, the two galaxies are going to collide. And there was this sense tonight of two galaxies coming in, and this power then. And Roberto's had a very different relationship. I think from a sociological point of view, the relationships are really quite different. And wow, and I'm so glad they're different also, because that makes the space between different, and it shows that we are individuals. Roberto, your playing was wonderful too, and it had I would say a certain kind of congeniality. It never really, it was this relationship of the individual and then society, and a certain fitting of all of that. You were not. It didn't feel that you were testing the boundaries, or you were pushing the boundaries, or creating your own boundaries, or creating a new creation that had a polarity with what Robert was creating. So that made it a very different experience. And the visual aspect of it, I felt we never saw the bodies. When Roberto played and when percussionists played, we saw their bodies. They were actually, at least visually, they were whole people. And in this performance, and the piano is a big instrument, we know, but it was oddly made both big and small at the same time. We never saw the piano in its totality. And we even, I thought at first we saw a discombobulated Bertram. We saw Bertram, and then there was the ghost of his hands floating someplace in the space of the inner workings of the piano itself. And, you know, where is this discombobulation? It was almost like an atomizing kind of experience and retrofitting. And I felt also the colors were interesting too, because it was not directly apparent it was not tangible in the way water was tangible and in the way that wind is tangible. The blades of grass, the reeds, that's very tangible. That's a very tangible thing. But when it's a color and the color has more of an abstraction, even the fireworks, when I saw that, I first thought fireworks, then I thought, no, actually, maybe these are not fireworks. It's design and color and rhythm in a more abstract kind of way. That created for me a little bit more of a kind of paradox, like a Zen poem or a haiku or a koan, which doesn't make sense. How loud is the sound of clapping with one hand, kind of thing in the air, and the fact that it didn't make immediate sense kind of threw it more into a mystical realm, and the whole thing of this, and so my mind space was quite different. It created a very different mind space.
Thank you. Wow.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I see other names. Anybody wants to throw a question or a thought? I see Jing
yes.
Hong.
You can always
Ito.
type it.
Something.
You can type it if you don't feel like turning on your camera.
Oddly, you're all talking about eruptions and fireworks and galaxies clash, etc. And I think for me, the image that is stronger now, after having seen the video only once with you tonight, is when it goes into soft piano suddenly, and then there is the light and the sky. It's anticlimax. It's totally anticlimax. And for me, that has been, I really went, oh, wow. It was like the medicine after all the clashes, the fighting, the titans and the galaxies on this. And then we have a drop of essential oil that comes down and softens and soothes the soul and the body. So for me, that was the strongest moment of the whole video. But I'm a lady, so yeah, so must be related to this. I don't know.
No, everybody's welcome. Hello, hello.
No, I actually, I don't know if Tejas agrees with me or not about this, but when it comes to films of any kind, we always want the ending to be the best, because that's the final image that stays in people's minds. When they finish the film, we want that image to linger even after the video is over.
Because,
so I'm very happy that you said that.
Because if you look at Bertram's expression and during the firework and the fight and the tension and the drama, he had it in his face, in the concentration of his eyes, and then suddenly, and the hands were vroom, 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 and then suddenly the hands goes quiet. And so very soft pianissimo chord, and then the sky appears. And it was such a wow. It was such a okay, really like the Kerala oil for the massage, and comes here. And
it's so funny that you mentioned essential oils, and it's so funny that John mentioned Andromeda Galaxy and the Milky Way Galaxy, because the visual that we have actually used, I know it's hard to see, but it's actually soap mixed with food coloring being dropped into milk. Okay. That's why they spread, and the milk, the fat from the milk is fighting the soap. That's why you get those visuals. So I'm so happy you saw the essential oils and the galaxies, because for me, when Bertram is playing the piano, I'm seeing him like kind of he's like trying to like mess with the physical reality, trying to like, that's why we put those colors. I mean, that visual. It's hard to see because we have like mixed it with so many other layers. But yeah, that's that. I'm very happy you noticed that.
Deepesh, in my 20s, I went several summers to a summer academy given by a famous British composer called Peter Maxwell Davies. And I remember him telling me the two most important moments of a new composition you have to succeed is the very beginning and the very end. The very beginning because you have to grab the attention of the audience, and the very end because it's the last thing they hear of the piece. And then in between you also have to work, but the very beginning and the very end. So it's the same principle as what you have just shared with visual arts.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like for music and film, we have this, and I think even dance, we have this aspect of time, right? Visual arts doesn't have time. Like it's a painting, and you just have to. I mean, it does. Like the painting does change when you look at it, but the viewer does not have. The viewer does not, for visual arts, the viewer is not told how long they can look at the painting. We get to decide how long it gets to be, and we get to decide the ending and the beginning. So I absolutely agree with you on that.
And we can include literary arts, how
yes.
a play starts and ends, how a novel, the beginning of a novel, I'm immediately taken and I'm reading, listening, or not.
So I'll add a small thing. I definitely agree with you, Deepesh. And when I teach my classes, interestingly enough, in the very, very, very traditional way of filmmaking, there's this thing that you're supposed to have falling action at the end of your film. The film should climax, and then you should have a certain amount of falling action. I've never been a fan of that. Like, I feel like the falling action should be as short as possible. So basically, a lot of our films, the other films that we make too, we often end right in the middle of a major thing, or even end on a major moment, rather than, like, I'd rather get rid of falling action and get rid of rising action as well. So yeah.
What is a falling action? I don't know that.
So officially, so what Deepesh is saying, and what I agree with, is that in a more old-fashioned style of filmmaking, the really key moment comes, and then there's another 20% where you give the audience time to relax.
Okay.
The story has to like resolve, and like all the characters have to like make peace or whatever. But
as Sabrina said, like the sunshine comes right at the end, and then the movie is over. We don't want there to be some extra space for you to just spend time thinking about it. We want to end with that kind of moment.
But even though Tejas, you said that I agree with you about like ending right at the climax and not having falling action. If a film is written properly and constructed well, the falling action can happen within the audience themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Once the film's over and the credits roll,
that's when it should happen. Yeah,
exactly. And if the audience is doing it by themselves, it's a much better experience, because it's like almost feeding someone forcefully when you give them the ending and the resolution. The audience loves more to figure out how to chew the food by themselves.
Well, it allows them to actually be more part of it rather than because then when they're figuring it out themselves or making their own interpretations, they become active participants instead of passive. So
the suggestion is stronger than always just.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the very.
Okay. Thank you. Very interesting tonight, like every Thursday. There are a few more people who have joined us tonight. Do they feel like sharing a thought or a question?
If not, it's okay.
But that's fine, and you can always ask us the question next week, or you can always
comment on the video.
Or on the Facebook page.
Okay, then. thank you for tonight. Congratulations, Bertram. And then this production is possible thanks to the digital presentation art grant of the National Arts Council. So we are always grateful to the National Arts Council. Anything to
yes,
add?
I just need to say that next week there will be a video which is a little bit different, but there won't be live chat, and you will see why next week. I don't reveal. So we will meet again online on the 5th of November, but the video is on next week. You will see it reminded on the Facebook page, and there will be a longer video, so we really invite you to watch it all. And in 2 weeks' time, when we meet again here on Zoom, we will discuss about that video. Yeah, okay. Thank you, and have a nice week, everyone. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.